crime, punishment, suffering. These are a few of the things that we might talk about tonight because reasons. Because I read a book involving those things. So as you may know, I recently finished Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I'm not saying his first name because I have no idea how to pronounce it, I guess. Probably could, but I won't. I got a lot out of this book. This was a very interesting book. I by no means understood all of it. Wish I did, but that's hubris. I wanted to make sure I did this right. I kind of outlined this and I kind of broke it into two subsections. I call those two the triple parallels, essentially. There were two groups of three people that stuck out to me with some overlapping between them. Yeah, I'm going to split it out into that, talk about the different topics. Let's just get into it. I would also like to note that this is going to be fully a spoiler talk. I'll be talking lots and lots of spoilers in this analysis. Be warned. So the first group of three that I noticed was Rodia, Svidrigailov, thanks Russia, Svidrigailov, who I'm just going to call Svid, and then Pyotr Luzhin. So we have our main character Rodia, Svid, who was the suitor for Dunya's hand that killed his wife. And then we have Luzhin, who is the suitor for Dunya's hand that was, an a-hole. I mean, Svid was an a-hole too, but Luzhin was the offended a-hole. There were roughly three kind of parallels that I noticed between the three of these men. That was parallels of cowardice, and then pride / entitlement. I think it's more aptly entitlement than pride. And then kindness. And I'm going to go over those three things and how they intertwine within the three of them. Let's start with cowardice because alphabetical order. Each of these three had some sort of cowardice within them. Rodia is more, his is more outspoken because he specifically points it out before he turns himself in. Cowardice is what drove him to commit the crime, to kill the moneylender. And cowardice is also what he overcame in order to turn himself in. There is basically a direct parallel with Svid here, because cowardice also drove Svid to kill his wife. But he did not overcome it in the end, and he killed himself. Rodia's was more cowardice of his station, I think is the term he used. His cowardice is definitely entwined with the type of entitlement that he exhibits, because both of those, drove him to kill the moneylender. And it's hard to define what cowardice of his station kind of means. I would describe it as an impoverished cowardice, and tied closely, of course, with his pride, because he wasn't always like this. The pride of someone who, wants to seem better than they are and wants to be better than they are, but doesn't want to exhibit it to those people around them, if that makes any sense at all. I believe even the impoverished hold their heads up high. They have a semblance of dignity or pride. Take that away, and what do you really have? And I think the cowardice of his station is tied to he was losing his dignity, and because of that drove him to what he did. Conversely, Svid's cowardice is completely different. Svid's cowardice is innate. His cowardice is lack of confrontation to a certain extent, or more lack of power than anything. The cowardice of someone who lacks power and craves it. And thus we have poison for his tool of use. Or was it poison? It's not really clear. It was poison or a clever scheme that basically was like, oh yeah, you're going to drink wine and then go in a hot tub. Moral of the story, kids, don't wait a half hour. I mean, well, actually, I shouldn't be talking to kids right now because kids shouldn't be drinking wine. That's bad. But moral of the story. How is this also exhibited in other places? It's exhibited in his interactions with his wife, because his wife is a sugar mama. Like, sugar mamas existed even back then. He didn't actually love her, which is why he fell for Dunya so quickly. And his cowardice was so hard to get over because he didn't have anything to help him get it over. We see another... I'll come back to this when I get to kindness, because, of course, it's all intertwined. Luzhin's cowardice is even more subtle. I think I would describe it as the cowardice of not letting yourself get close to people, essentially. It's I'm not saying that everybody who is above somebody and doesn't want to get to know the person below them, I'm not saying those people are cowards. But essentially, it's the cowardice that comes from when you're so high above somebody and you value that position such that you think becoming closer to someone below you is going to affect your dignity. And thus, that's where the cowardice comes in. A little bit of a stretch there, but that's kind of where I saw it with him. His cowardice prevented him from actually getting close to Dunya and being a decent person, essentially. The second thing I would like to talk about, the second thing with this trifecta, is entitlement. Each of these three characters is entitled in some way, shape, or form. And let me explain what I mean by types of entitlement. There's two sides to entitlement. There is the entitlement that comes from the lack of something, and then there's entitlement that comes from an overabundance of something. Most of the time it's wealth. So entitlement that comes from the lack of. This is the least obvious one, I think. Essentially, it can be classified as is victim entitlement. Is another name for it. So this is essentially the mindset that you have not been given anything, or you have been taken things from. And because that has happened to you, or you didn't get a certain thing, everything should be given to you. In this case, this is Rodia. He's either had things taken from him, I don't think that's explicitly stated, but he's in a bad situation. He has a lack of money. And thus, when he goes to kill the moneylender, part of his justification is, I need the money more than she does. I deserve it because I don't have it. The second part, the other side of it, I split into two, which we have what I would call silver spoon entitlement or leech entitlement, if you want to get really pessimistic with it. Essentially, this is the entitlement of somebody who has always had things and everything has already been given to them. And thus, they think everything else should be given to them. So they have so much they think everything else is theirs to take or to be given to. And this is Svid. Svid is, again, his wife is his sugar mama. Everything's been given to him. I wouldn't be surprised if he was one of those people that, almost, didn't... My image is of a guy that essentially has mooched off of people his entire life. I don't know if that's entirely accurate based on what I was told, but that's what I have in my mind. That goes directly into his cowardice as well. It's very tied to his cowardice because he's never had to get anything for himself. He's never had to take anything for himself. So instead of, being like, hi, I'm gonna leave you, and then just leaving, he murders his wife. I think he talked to his wife. I can't remember. Nevertheless, he was entitled. And that's why he also came very hard at Dunya. And that's why, you see the beating of the servants based on entitlement and cowardice closely intertwined. The third type of entitlement is what I would call backbreaking entitlement. This happens when somebody has worked for everything and then they believe because they've worked for everything that they have, everything else should be given to them. This is the most deceitful type of entitlement. And what I mean by that is that's the one that is most easily justifiable, in my opinion, even though victim entitlement is actually more prevalent in today's society, from what I've seen. So Luzhin is condescending and very prideful, and thus, I am above everybody. I'm above Dunya. I'm lifting you up to myself. Thus, you should worship me. In this case, he really does want, worship from his wife, which is not a healthy marriage, by the way. Like that one-sided type of, hi, you're going to worship the ground I walk on, and I'm going to accept it because I'm so kind to you. It just makes my stomach churn. This guy is like a fat, noble type of person. I know that they all were wearing rags essentially, but he still feels like one of those fat, I worked my back off for this and I'm just sitting pretty. And I thought the intertwining of these entitlements was very interesting, and it played into how their stories kind of set up, how their stories resolved. And of course, who gets the girl in the end? Not Rodia, because that'd be weird, but he gets a different. The last parallel between these three is kindness. Each of these three people exhibits kindness outwardly. Only one of them, I would say, is actually kind within their heart. First up, let's go to Rodia again. So Rodia is the one, obviously, who is kind within his heart. He takes all the money that his mother gave him and gives it to Sonia's family when their dad dies, which is, of course, an extraordinary act of kindness. And he struggles with this throughout the book as well. I believe he goes back and forth about, I think it was like 5 kopecks that he gave to a beggar just randomly. Like he gives it to her without thinking about it. And then later he's just like, why did I give it to her? Why did I give it to her? And that's the nature of the sin, the murder, digging its way into his nature. And I think that's further supported by, his mother basically adoring him and being like, no, this is not whatever, and her daughter agreeing with her. So Rodia is truly kind, and in the end, that helps him, because the only reason Rodia was able to overcome both his cowardice and his entitlement wore off first, because his entitlement was there briefly, and then once he had committed the murder, it was basically gone. But there were small spurts of it coming back every once in a while when he was deranged. But he overcame his cowardice and his entitlement because of, what was in his heart, and most importantly, the love of a woman. We'll talk about this. Let me go over Svid, and we'll come back to this. So Svid is one of the fake kind, too, of the three. So Svid obviously suffers from a guilty conscience, just like, Rodia does. So where do we see this? We see this, Svid's betrothed. What was it, like the 16-year-old? It was really weird. That last act of kindness was something that he was seeking. He was seeking absolution from that. He was seeking even getting betrothed to this lady. Like it was almost similar to Luzhin's, I'm going to marry you and rise you out of the dumps, but less worship, but more he wanted to be kind to somebody in order to decrease the weight of his burden on his soul, which was the murder of his previous wife. In the end, his kindness did not help him because it was not genuine, essentially. Whereas Rodian's kindness eventually ended up paying him back in spades because, a girl fell in love with him, obviously. And so how does this affect the mentalities of both of these characters? How does this intertwine? How do these three things kind of intertwine in both of their stories? Well, Rodia and the obvious thing is Svid did not end up overcoming his cowardice. He had become too callous to the world. He was so deep inside his cowardice and his lack of anything that he had nothing to pull him out. Even his own kindness could not, like his own effort at kindness could not pull him out of the well of despair and suffering that he was suffering. And thus he gave in to his cowardice. Rodia, on the other hand, overcame his entitlement, and overcame his cowardice because of the fruits of his kindness. I mean, Svid, you could say it's too little too late, whereas Rodia was just giving out of his heart throughout the entire time. And because of that, he was able to overcome, his cowardice, not kill himself and turn himself in. I believe Sonia was a big part in finalizing the decision to not jump off the bridge. Because if someone can look at you and still obviously love you, or obviously not think you're a monster, but just show kindness back to you, even when you're in the depths of despair and depths of suffering and you think you're such a horrible person, that does something within someone, and that can help a person change. Because he knew he did something wrong, but that forgiveness, essentially, that Sonia exhibited released him in a certain sense. The love that she gave eventually released him while he was in prison as well, when he actually consciously realized it. I think he subconsciously realized it, and that caused him to turn himself in, especially sort of. He realized part of it before he turned himself in, when he was at the ledge, I believe. And then he realized all of it when he finally broke down crying at the very end. Luzhin's kindness, of course, is condescension, not kindness. He believed it to be kindness, but it was in reality selfishness. And that will play into the next section a little bit more. But there are parallels between Svid and Luzhin and Rodia in terms of kindness. More Svid and Luzhin than Rodia and Luzhin. Luzhin was looking out for his own skin. That's the main thing. He wasn't actually being kind. He was virtue signaling. In the end, he loses things. He just doesn't get what he wants, because virtue signaling versus actually being kind. So there's another set of parallels between the three suitors. You have Svid and Luzhin, who we talked about briefly already. And we have Dmitry Razmunin. I'm just going to call him Raz, which is Rodia's friend, who eventually got the girl. So the two main, one parallel is kind of intertwined with kindness, and the other two are, the other one that I want to talk about is not. But so we have the parallel of selfishness, the selfishness or selflessness of these three men. And then we also have the parallel of friendship. Do these men have friends? What are their friends like? What do they do for their friends? So let's talk about selfishness and kindness first. Svid and Luzhin, we both kind of talked about, they were both being selfish about their kindnesses, but Luzhin's kindness and selfishness is intertwined, and Svid's sort of is. So Svid, of course, was being kind in order to get absolution, which is selfish in itself to a point. I don't know, that's a deeper question. And then Luzhin was being obviously selfish to get worship, which is who's being kind to be selfish, essentially. Svid was also being selfish when he offered to run away with Dunya. So in their interactions with Dunya, Svid is selfish by saying, hey, I'll run away with you. But in reality, that's something, he gets something and he gains something. There is no selflessness in there. There's all the selfishness in that statement, because he was running away from something in his own life, and he wanted something but couldn't have it. Therefore, he sought to change that situation. Luzhin, we mentioned already. I'm going to bring you up. Obviously selfish. Selfish little prick. I really don't like Luzhin. He just makes my skin crawl. Svid to a lesser extent. Now, Raz. Raz is awesome. Probably my favorite character in the book. Raz is kind and exhibits selflessness, Like, he wasn't trying to get anything. Yes, he saw Dunya and was like, oh snap, she cute. But it's not like he was trying to, it's not like that was his only goal. Like, that wasn't his only motivation. I don't think even that was his primary motivation. I don't think it was a love at first sight type of thing. I think it was a gradual realization of, oh, she's cute and intelligent and old. So it wasn't a initial, I'm only going to be kind to this person so I can get some. It was a, hi, this is the family of one of my best friends. I'm going to take care of them like they are my own. Doesn't matter. And of the three, Raz is also the poorest of them, and he gives them the most. Comparatively to Luzhin's frugality that he, exhibited and was like, I'm going to give you pennies and pennies until we're married, then you can have more. And Raz, who has comparably nothing, was like, I'm going to use my connections and favors and my money to get you a place to stay. Because, yeah. The next thing let's talk about is friendship. So, the power of friendship. It's kind of interesting how depressing this book is, but the morals of the story are friendship and love. Svid. Obviously, he has no friends. I mean, that's not all of it, but like, Svid and Luzhin are similar because they are, they have their friends. No, they don't have their friends. They only are friends with people that they can get something out of, essentially. So Svid only tries to become friends with Rodia to get his blessing for Dunya. And he also tries to become friends with him because of a sense of shared suffering, because they both murdered people, even though it's not clear whether or not Svid actually knew that Rodia killed the moneylender. It was creepy. But essentially, pain and suffering of the negative type. There is a positive type, but that's a weird conversation that I haven't thought through yet. And then trying to get something out of him. Luzhin, of course, is all, what can I get out of this? I fully believe that if we had seen Luzhin with anybody that was of higher rank than him, he would have groveled. He's that type of Weasley, slimy, ugh. He's above everybody. Like, he can't become friends with anybody because he doesn't want to. He's afraid of it or something. Like that kind of ties back to his cowardness of like, his pride and his dignity prevents him becoming friends with, Andre, his roommate, because he just thinks Andre's a stupid person. It's like, I'm so much above you. And we see this as well in the funeral party, I believe it was. It's just his condescension coming out and preventing him from actually becoming friends with anybody around him. Because it's like, I'm the most prestigious lodger. Bow before me. It's disgusting. I hate him. Yeah. Conversely, Dmitri. I'm gonna go back to this. My friend is sick. I'm gonna do everything I can to help him. My friend's family comes to town. I'm gonna do everything I can to help him. Entirely selfless, not trying to get anything out of anyone. He's just trying to help and repay friendship. Now, do we ever see Rodia repay this friendship? No, but we can assume that they were good friends. Like there was enough established of we're good friends that we can assume that when they were in university, they were inseparable. Raz is the best. He is the best type of friend that you want to have. And because of this, because of the power of friendship and selflessness, he comes out on top and presumably gets the girl. I can't remember. I think they said they got married. Should be nice. So, morals of the story. 1, the world is a dark and scary place. 2, love. 3, friendship. Those things will take you through it all. Which, honestly, is so funny to me. But it makes sense. Because, yeah, those things will take you through everything. We're social creatures, which is friendship and love. We need love. We can't just go through suffering without some sort of a love. Love will take you out of suffering and alleviate it. Where you get that, that is a matter of debate. I hope you enjoyed this. Hopefully I do this with more books, maybe let me know what your thoughts. Do you think I was off base on some things? Because there are definitely some stretches that I made. Yeah, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm right. Do what you talk to me about what you thought. Better question. What did you get out of this book? Tell me that, because I know I missed a lot with this book because it's my first time reading it. Go ahead and like and subscribe. If you want to buy the book, I'm going to put a link down below that's a affiliate link that I get money off of. So, yep, to go into my house fund. Thank you for coming. Eventually get some sleep, because sleep is important. Remember that, people.